The Financial Times. Her TED Talk has been seen over millions of times, and she's been translated into 30 languages. So excited for this session. Keren, are you here? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Keren Elazari.
I got my own. So the deal is, I'm such a hacker, I wouldn't agree to use the show's computers. So this is why I have to spend a couple minutes telling you about my beautiful morning, looking at the Miami Beach sunrise, and asking you, how has this summit been for everybody? Good morning, are you here with me? Hello? Make some noise. Yeah, that's great. It's very good to see that you're here with me. So it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here with you today. I'm going to take you on a tour, if you will, a journey into my world. The world of hackers. And this is your opportunity to buckle up, because it's going to be a fast ride, and join me on a tour for this cyber world. And we're not just going to look at the cyber world and the hackers world from the defender's point of view. No, we're going to look at the future of cybersecurity from the hacker's point of view. Now, I happen to be a hacker. I'm very proud to call myself a hacker. I've called myself a hacker since I first discovered how to write HTML code and how to use other people's HTML code to get on other people's computers. That was more than 25 years ago, so I feel pretty good saying that. But you must be curious, okay, what does it mean? Do we have a hacker amongst us? Aren't we supposed to be protecting the world from hackers? Well, it is my perspective that there's actually quite a lot of friendly hackers out there that can help us. So when I talk about hackers, I want you to think not just about this sort of image, the hacker in a hoodie. You know, I grew up in beautiful, sunny Tel Aviv, Israel, where it's very much like the Miami weather, and you don't spend your time wearing a hoodie. It was very warm and very humid, so instead, I spent time where we had good air conditioning. Where did we have good air conditioning? In the school library and in the school's computer lab. So I looked more like this young girl, and I was very curious. I spent a lot of time on those computers, learning about the internet, learning about this digital world, teaching myself. And in fact, because I want you to trust me as your tour guide this morning, let's pull up a real photo. Not that beautiful, nice little girl, but let's pull up an actual photo. This is from the yearbook of my school, taken just moments away from the beautiful Mediterranean beaches of Tel Aviv. Now, you're looking up at me, you're looking up at the screen, you're looking up at me, and you're thinking, did Keren show up to school that day? Was she arrested by cyber cops just a moment before for hacking? No, I did show up to school that day. I was there. It will be a little bit tricky for you to find me, though, in the photo. I hope you're ready for it. Here it comes. That's me. That's the truth. I was so much of a nerd that I look like a little boy, and even for my school photo, I wore my state-of-the-art 1993 Sony Walkman, because that technology was the best I had to help me get in touch with that digital world that I was imagining. I listened to my music, and I imagined I was living in a science fiction story. The truth is, I was so inspired by science fiction stories because I did spend a lot of time in the library. I didn't have a lot of friends my age, and even the kids playing Dungeons and Dragons wouldn't let me join their team. So I had to find myself other hobbies and other friends. Thankfully, in 1995, I met somebody who changed my life, and I blame her for all of my career choices, good and bad. Hopefully, you'll recognize her in the coming photo, although it's from 24 years ago. Her name, Angelina Jolie. In 1995, she portrayed a fierce Hollywood hacker in the movie simply called Hackers. Has anyone here seen the movie? I hope you have. I certainly have contributed a lot of my career choices to that film. In that story, the hackers were not the bad guys. Those high school kids, weirdos like me, with short hair, that enjoyed listening to the same kind of music that I did, were actually the heroes. They were the ones who showed the FBI where the real cyber criminal was hiding. They were the ones who prevented an ecological catastrophe. In fact, if you remember that film, it was perhaps one of the first cases of ransomware in history. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, a virus called the Da Vinci virus in the film, created by a cyber criminal to cover his tracks, that virus actually threatens to take over an oil tanker and capsize it, to turn it over so that the oil would spill, unless it is paid $1 million. So perhaps one of the first cases of ransomware in history. And those hackers stopped it. So that was the type of hacker that I wished to become. Ever since then, I've dedicated my career, my life's work, to learning everything we can from hackers, from friendly hackers, and from the bad hackers as well. These are some of the organizations, companies, and technology developers that I've worked with in my career. I served my time in the Israeli military, working on information security challenges, and now, in the past couple of years, I'm an academic, a researcher, spending most of my time at Tel Aviv University and some of my time in California with Singularity University. So that's some of the pieces of my puzzle. But a very important piece of my puzzle is also that I host Israel's largest hacker event. It's called B-Sides TLV. B-Sides, just like the side B of your cassette tape or vinyl album, if you're of that generation, it's the alternative. It's where the real hackers of Tel Aviv get together and share their work. And I hope you join us one day, perhaps next summer in sunny Tel Aviv, for the next B-Sides Tel Aviv chapter or event meeting. More than that, in 2014, I became the first Israeli woman to share my message on the international TED stage. And when I got that opportunity, when I received that invite, I realized it's a chance to share my point of view, that hackers are not always the bad guys. In fact, I claimed, sometimes hackers can actually be the immune system for our new connected reality. But not a lot of people feel that way still. I understand I still need to convince some people that hackers can teach us. In the years since my TED Talk, that has been viewed by many people, I realized a few more things. It's not just that friendly hackers can help us. There's also a few important lessons about the future that hackers of all kinds can teach us. And sometimes the bad hackers, the criminals, the spies, the terrorists, the government agencies out to get us, that kind of adversary can teach us a lot about our future. So that adversary can be our teacher. So today in this journey, we're going to go through 5 stops, 5 lessons that we can learn from those hackers. And what would the first lesson be? This is probably the biggest, trickiest one of all, from my point of view at least. Cybersecurity these days, and cyber protection, it is about protecting information and its integrity. But more than that, it's about our way of life. It's about the trust that we have come to place, that trust that we really rely on in every digital system that made it possible for all of us to be here in this room. The airplanes, the transportation systems, the electricity systems, the healthcare providers, of course. The past couple of years, we've seen many attacks, including ransomware specifically, on healthcare systems. I know that in Singapore, the national healthcare system was also affected by a cyber attack, which certainly caused a loss of trust in that system and the ability to protect it, which is a problem we need to solve. More than that, if you remember from 2 years ago, the WannaCry virus, we cannot spend time in a cyber event without talking about this virus, because it didn't just disrupt the UK's national healthcare services and caused 30% of their clinics and doctors' offices to be unavailable to patients. Let's put it in a human perspective. Imagine you're going into the doctor's office. Imagine you have an important MRI appointment. You've waited for that appointment 3 months, 6 months. Your insurance paid out for it. The MRI machine is infected with a virus. How do you feel about going into such a device that is bombarding your body with radiation? Think about that as well. As security professionals and technology evangelists, we understand that perhaps a virus like a ransomware virus may not change the radiation levels of an MRI. But is that going to be the case in the future? WannaCry, of course, disrupted a lot of other systems as well. I heard that in a factory in France, it completely stopped the manufacturing of new cars. It was a Renault-Nissan factory. Because this was a factory in France, and it was the weekend, they were not working very hard to begin with. You think this is a joke. I'm actually quoting the work manager from that factory. However, what if it happened on a Monday or a Tuesday? Different story. It also disrupted the services for a telecom operator, Telefonica, which operates telephone operations for many people across Europe. And it made its way all over the world. The thing about the WannaCry virus, this is the one that really got me. This is the information screen in a German train station. Train still left on time, but how would you feel if you see this as you walk into an airport or train station, or you see this in the traffic light system in your morning commute? How does that impact your trust in the systems we rely on? And that is the point I'm trying to make here, that this trust is so crucial for our way of life. Now, just recently, cities and local state organizations all across the United States have started to get hit with ransomware. This is from the offices of the city of Baltimore. You'll notice in the far right lower corner, that's the punchline, a handwritten note. Computer systems are down. For 2 weeks, people couldn't buy or sell new houses because they couldn't register them. For 2 weeks, people couldn't pay their water bills. For 2 weeks, people couldn't get basic services from their city hall. And this didn't just happen for Baltimore. In fact, according to a recent report, more than 600 local state organizations, and that includes municipalities, schools, healthcare providers, emergency providers like a fire service, or even police stations, were all disrupted by ransomware, and that is in the last year alone. So this type of attack on the integrity of data also impacts people's trust in the services that they rely on. This is a report that recently came out stating the details and the statistics. If you want to learn more about the impact of ransomware in the United States, I suggest you check out this report from Emisoft. However, the report and the attention the ransomware attacks have created has also caused the FBI to issue a public service announcement. This is from just 2 weeks ago. A public service announcement warning local state organizations, helping them or giving them some information on what to do. And what is one of the #1 recommendations? Back up your data. Protect your information. That is one of the #1 recommendations to mitigate the threat of ransomware. The Department of Homeland Security here in the United States just last week passed a bill in Senate to set up incident response teams all across the United States to help local organizations deal with this rising threat. So this is what we're discussing when we're talking about threats to our way of life. But it's not, of course, just happening in Europe or in the United States. It's happening all over the world. Take, for example, this company, Norsk Hydro. I don't know if you've ever heard about Norsk Hydro, but they happen to be one of the world's largest manufacturers of aluminum, a very important commodity. When their factories are hit with ransomware, they go to manual production. When they go to manual production, they don't produce as much aluminum. The global cost of aluminum goes up by several points for that period of several days. So this is something that is impacting global markets and supply chains. In fact, who here has ever heard about the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company? Raise your hands if you have. Only a handful of people, maybe less than, I would say, estimate 10% of you. Anyone who's never heard about them, I can guarantee you, I'm willing to put some digital money on the line, that you probably have a device in your pocket that has a component made by Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They are the single largest provider of electronic system-on-a-chip components that go into every new state-of-the-art iPhone device. So when that company is hit with ransomware, and they were last year, when their factories all across Taiwan and Southeast Asia are disrupted, they cannot manufacture the state-of-the-art chips that go into the state-of-the-art new iPhones, and they suffer $300 million in damages, all because of out-of-date, end-of-life operating systems. This is seriously the type of operating system that you can find on manufacturing floors. Now you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh, come on, Keren, nobody still uses Windows XP. Ha, 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 very funny. Those who are not laughing, they know how many people are still using Windows XP. And you know what? Let's leave Windows XP alone. It's not nice to pick on somebody such a veteran. Let's look at somebody more popular. Windows 7. 37% of operating systems in the world, which are Microsoft operating systems, run Windows 7. Windows 7 goes to end of support in about 3 months, a little under 3 months. So all of those Windows 7 machines all over the world are going to become targets for potential attacks that will look for those unpatched, unsecured operating systems as soon as they go to end of support. That means Microsoft will no longer be pushing patches to them. So if you or your clients and the people that rely on you still have Windows 7 machines, time to think about migrating onwards. I've been saying it for 2 years, and every time I say it, I have to update the timeline. It's coming very soon. So that was our first lesson, a big lesson. The trust that we place in our digital life relies on all of these out-of-date systems. And it's not just about protecting the data that's on them, it's about protecting everything else that we rely on that runs on that. Furthermore, we are dealing with very sophisticated, very innovative, very motivated attackers. And they're not just out for our credit card numbers or our money or even our secrets. Sometimes they're out to disrupt our way of life. Sometimes that's their goal. Case in point, this state-of-the-art data center, at least their cooling solution is state-of-the-art. You can't argue with that. A very humble data center that was actually the patient zero for the devastating NotPetya wiper virus. If you haven't heard about the NotPetya virus, you may have been living in a non-digital environment, because according to Wired magazine, NotPetya is the world's most devastating cyber attack in history. And this clever virus pretended to be ransomware. So whilst it was destroying, wiping the master boot record section of hard drives all over the Ukraine and then all over the world, it was actually claiming to ask people for money. It was pretending to be ransomware, but instead it was just deleting files that will never be recovered again. For an organization like Maersk, which operates some of the world's largest shipping terminals, when their computers all over the world were infected with this virus, that meant that those shipping terminals that rely on computer technology to run these big cranes and machines to move those containers around, that meant that for several days they could not move anything. They had to go to manual pen and paper. They had to defer shipments. They had to tell people who relied on them to get their shipments elsewhere. Now, for that company, they've come out very heroically. Their CIO came out to the Davos Economic Forum in Switzerland and said, it took our team 2 weeks to recover back from that damage. And we needed to find one server that wasn't infected with the virus. That server was in Africa. There's an incredible story about how they got that one server that included important information for them to recover their entire network. But think about how different that story could have been if they had cyber protections in place and if they had backups in place. That company certainly learned the lesson. And in their own financial documents, they've said, once again, $300 million in damages. You might think that's a high number, but many analysts have estimated this to be a low ball figure, because it doesn't take into consideration all of the other organizations that were relying on the goods in those containers. Think about pharmaceuticals, drugs, medicines, foods that were going bad, cars, consumer electronics. Every good that you might buy in a shop somewhere probably makes its way around the world in a container like that, in a container port and terminal like that. So think about that potential disruption to our way of life. Now, the attackers behind this, we mentioned, not ransomware, remember? They also went after something very near and dear to my personal well-being. Anyone here has ever been to Tasmania, down under, in Australia? So Tasmania is not just the kingdom of the Tasmanian devil, it's also the home for this factory. It makes something which is really important for my well-being. This is a cocoa and chocolate manufacturing facility. Very important for my personal well-being, as my family members know. So when this facility, all the way down under, gets infected with that virus, with the NotPetya virus, that means they're not producing their goods. And this is a facility that's owned by Mondelez. Mondelez is one of the world's largest owners of candy brands. If you like the Oreo cookies, they own that. If you like the Cadbury chocolates, they own that as well. So when their factories around the world are impacted with this virus, what do? Well, of course, they send the incident response teams up there. They try to restore from backup. They try to really get back access to their systems. They also turn to their cyber risk insurance provider, Zurich Insurance. And they come to them and they say, listen, this terrible virus has disrupted our systems. We have a cyber risk insurance policy in place. Please help us cover the costs. We believe it's $100 million. That's a very traditionally low estimate for that type of damages all over the world. What does their insurance provider tell them? No, we're not paying. Yes, you had a cyber risk insurance policy, but we believe this virus, this attack, is an act of global conflict between nation states. Therefore, it is exempt from your insurance policy. Just imagine that moment. So, of course, Mondelez are not taking it standing. They're taking Zurich Insurance to court. This is a case that's now being debated in the courts, I believe, in Illinois, in the state of Illinois here in the United States. That case and the resulting, perhaps even precedent that will come out of it would be really important for the future of the cyber insurance and cyber protection industry. So stay tuned. NotPetya is still with us, and it's impacting our lives. Now, what else is happening out there? When we're seeing these attacks, when we're seeing these devastating wiper attacks, we also have to ask ourselves, what are we not noticing? It's not just the files that are disappearing. What is the end game for the attacker? In the country of Chile, a wiper attack on the bank system, the Bank of Chile, wiped out 9,000 servers. As everybody was running around trying to back up, to get back systems online, to assure customers their money is fine, the criminals were actually hiding behind on a SWIFT servers, launching their SWIFT transactions, getting away with $10 million. So sometimes a devastating attack, a wiper attack that creates all of that chaos and that fog of war is only a distraction for something else that's happening as well. What is our third lesson today? What we can learn from hackers. We live in an expanding digital universe. To hackers, that means an expanding attack surface. More and more systems that we can rely on. In fact, now on planet Earth, we have more digital devices than ever before. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let me ask you, with a hand on your heart, what do you have at home? More digital devices or family members and pets? Think about that. Now, unless you have a flock of sheep in your backyard or an ant farm, in which case I congratulate you for your life choices. However, for most people, many digital devices will share our lives. Yesterday, the Shark said that an iPhone has replaced a camera, a fax machine, a digital music player. That's right, but the iPhone is not alone. And there are so many digital devices that are joining our life. Not just a lot of them and not just more connectivity. They're also getting smarter. The amount of computing power on the planet has risen. That means all of these devices can now run code. They have sensors. They talk to one another. Don't take my word for it, though. This is a report from the Munich Security Conference together with the Gartner analysis firm. And according to them, last year, 2018, that was the year where it changed on planet Earth. That was the year where it became home to more devices than human beings. And that trend is only going to continue exponentially as we walk into the future. More people will be connected, yes. Many more devices will share our digital lives. Again, don't take my word for it. Don't take the Munich Security Conference word for it. Look up something called Shodan. Shodan is a search engine for connected devices. It's almost like a Google, but with it you can find servers, coffee machines, and sometimes even power plants that have been made connected and available over the internet. And the people who made them available did not secure or did not configure their connectivity in a proper way. Shodan.io, this is a service. I absolutely recommend learning how to use it. It will shed a lot of light on your digital life. Let's give you some examples. So this is something a couple of hackers found through Shodan. This is the control mechanism for a very unique mode of transportation. Some of you might read German. For the others, I'll give you a few clues. With this mode of transportation, you can change the speed of travel, you can change the direction of travel, and you can stop the vehicle in its tracks or up in the air. This is a cable car that goes up to the beautiful Tyrolean mountains in Austria. This cable car had a remote maintenance system installed, a secure remote maintenance system installed, which is how the hackers were able to get on it. Also turns out, it's not enough to call your system a secure remote maintenance system. Also not enough to put in little lock icons on your presentations. That's not enough. Turns out, it's science, what can I say? If you use out-of-date operating systems, if you use well-known vulnerabilities in your web applications, if you disregard the previous reports of hackers, that system is not that secure after all. Thankfully for these Austrians, it was a couple of friendly hackers. They call themselves the Internet Watchers. They found it, and not a James Bond criminal. So they reported it to the Austrian CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team, the Austrian CERT, and they managed to fix the problem. In another case, a security researcher I follow online used Shodan to find something a little more interesting. This is a public toilet system. I believe it's in the Netherlands. Via this remote maintenance tool, you can lock the toilets, unlock them, you can clean them, you can do all kinds of nasty things. So this reporter just published all the details online. I blocked out some of the IP address information in there, but you can see which ports were open. And he has actually gone out to call it the Internet of Toilets or the Internet of Shit. Pardon my French. I didn't make it, they did. So this is what people are connecting to the internet, and that is our lives. If you remember several years ago, an attack called Mirai, which means the future in Japanese, took over 300,000 devices all over the world and in people's homes, including web cameras, digital video recorders, routers, office copying machines. What all of these devices were doing was not spying through the cameras. They were actually creating a massive network, a botnet, a network of infected devices that can take over websites. And they did. They took over so many websites. At that time, it was the largest denial of service attack in history, at that time. It also happened to be November 2016, about 2 weeks before the American elections. So it took out major media publications, and that certainly had some sort of an impact. If you remember that attack, Mirai, one thing that stood out to a lot of people is that all of these devices were hacked by the code. The Mirai worm automatically added itself to more devices because it already had built into it the default username and passwords for so many of these devices. And this is the actual password for several thousands of those. There's a list of all of the 63 different vendors and passwords that are being used. Brian Krebs did a fantastic report on that if you want to learn more. But the reason that I bring up Mirai, an attack from 3 years ago, is because just recently, regulators took note. 3 years, that's a reasonable time for regulators. And actually, in the state of California, as of 2020, State Bill 327 says that it is illegal to have a device with a default username and password combination in the state of California, also in the state of Oregon. And you cannot market it or sell it to residents of the states of California and Oregon. Now, this may seem like a small thing to you, but remember, California is also the home to Silicon Valley. And Oregon is also the home to many technology companies that make these devices. So this kind of regulation is going to impact our future as well. A couple years too late, but it's still making some progress. Our lives are becoming more digital than ever before. These devices are becoming smarter than ever before, whether it's in transportation, with drones, or with our car services and our self-driving cars, perhaps our energy systems. Alexa, what are you doing there? Get out. She doesn't belong there. Sorry, it gets everywhere, doesn't it? And even in our bodies, technology is going to become part of our lives, whether we like it or not. Who is the CIO or the protector of all of these devices? For the devices that you have at home, that you confessed to me just earlier today that you have more devices than family members, who's running those? Who's securing those? Who's backing up that information? If it's not you, it might be a bad guy. So think about that as well. Our next lesson, lesson number 4, what can we learn from hackers? Everything has value, and sometimes that value can be found in unexpected places. And this is one of the more creative, clever, innovative things that cyber criminals have been doing recently. And it wasn't so criminal, I would do it myself. Check it out. So sometimes value can be found in your cup of coffee. Customers of Starbucks in Argentina were getting a little bit more than Java in their cup of coffee. They were actually getting some JavaScript. So what was happening there is that as people logged on to the free Wi-Fi, as you know, you walk into Starbucks, what do? You order your half calf, half decaf, tall, strong mocha latte on soy milk, of course, and then what do? You log on to the free Wi-Fi. As they logged on to the free Wi-Fi, their computers were being used to mine for cryptocurrencies. A small piece of JavaScript. That's all it took. This JavaScript is called CoinHive. Let me punch it up for you so it's bigger. CoinHive, this is a script. Somebody very clever managed to put that on the Wi-Fi landing page so that every time somebody connected to the Wi-Fi, they were running that landing page on their phone or on their computer, it was running that code. Of course, this was 2 years ago, and running that kind of code to mine for Bitcoin would be impossible on people's computers and phones. It wasn't mining for Bitcoin, it was mining for Monero, which is an alternative digital currency that is actually designed for this sort of distributed mining on a lot of lightweight devices. In fact, it's not just happening in Starbucks. Some of you in the room may have never visited a Starbucks, certainly not in Argentina. Perhaps you visited a small website. It's not very popular in the US, but maybe you've heard about it, the Pirate Bay. Oh, sorry, so this is CoinHive. This is what the website looks like for the people who make CoinHive. And they actually said, we monetize your business with your user CPU power. And this is exactly what the Pirate Bay did 3 times in the past 2 years. Oh, of course, you've never heard about Pirate Bay. What am I thinking? You're all saints. This is a very popular website where people go to acquire content that they may not wish to pay for. Let's describe it like that for those who aren't familiar with it. For others, it's a very popular torrenting website. And people have it on their computers all the time, usually open because it's running the downloads. And it was running those cryptocurrency mining operations on people's computers. But you must be thinking, oh, come on, Keren, we know all about Bitcoin and blockchain and digital currency. You can't really mine a lot on people's personal computers. You're right, you got to go to the cloud, where powerful computers exist with servers and big CPUs and maybe even GPUs that you can use to generate all the cryptocurrencies that you like, especially if somebody else is paying the electricity bill. And this is exactly what happened to none other than Tesla. Their cloud servers were used by criminals to generate cryptocurrencies. This happened recently as well. Now, in that particular case, the reason I bring up this story is because when this happens, it happens not because of a vulnerability, a bug, or a virus. It happens because of a security misconfiguration. It happens because of the way the AWS cloud servers were being configured with the Kubernetes Google software for managing cloud instances. So it was somebody's mistake. Now, these types of mistakes can cost you a lot of money. In fact, according to the OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, there's top 10 web application security risks or mistakes that people make, and that particular case goes under the category of security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration, that can cost you a lot of money. So security misconfiguration, which is a fancy way for saying a developer was ill-advised or made an error, or somebody connected something they shouldn't have. This also happened to Uber. Do you remember Uber had several data breaches recently? Back in 2015, they stored a credential, an important password, in a public server, which made it possible for bad guys to get access to the information. It also happened in 2017. So they actually made the same mistake more than once, and that caused them access to data of 57 million riders and drivers. That was the Uber data breach. You may have heard about that, a global event. A lot of people heard about that. Well, now regulators are paying attention. So for that small security misconfiguration, if you will, Uber now has to pay a fine, or they've already agreed to pay it in a settlement with the Federal Trade Commission of $148 million. And this settlement is going to be divided up between the American states in proportionate size to how many drivers and passengers were in each state. Similar things have happened for other companies. So British Airways experienced a data breach last summer. If you recall, for 2 weeks, their website actually allowed criminals to get people's credit card numbers. Once again, I don't know if this was a security misconfiguration or very, very creative criminals that got over some of the protections that were in place. However, they now have to pay a fine, $230 million, to ICO. That's the Information Commissioner in the UK. So the change that we're seeing in the past couple of years, not just the security industry generating a lot of money and generating a lot of profit, there's also regulators that are now really fining companies. So when there's such a risk at play, that also means companies should be more motivated to invest in security technologies to prevent terrible attacks and terrible losses like that from happening. Moving on to the fifth, almost final lesson that we have today. Well, the fifth lesson is the final lesson, but then we have a few more ideas of what we can learn from hackers to do better in the future. The final lesson is that hackers are very good friends with automation and innovation. And these are not just buzzwords for the technology industries, they're very, very common tools for attackers. Case in point, you remember WannaCry, that ransomware virus we started this conversation with? Forget WannaCry, that's old news. Now there's WannaMine. So somebody took that ransomware, took that same code, and they recycled it, they repurposed it specifically for cryptocurrency mining, and specifically for that currency, Monero, which I mentioned. What else are clever hackers doing? Well, do you remember Shodan that I just mentioned? How many people here are familiar with Metasploit? Metasploit, quite a few. Some of their security professionals, maybe 10% of you. So Metasploit is one of the world's most popular penetration testing platforms. It's a platform that ethical hackers and friendly hackers use, but also bad guys use, to automatically identify when a system has a specific vulnerability. Metasploit can launch the right exploit, the right weapon, to take advantage of that vulnerability. So today, good news, you don't need to know Shodan, you don't need to know Metasploit. Meet your new friend, the new friend of every hacker, Autosploit. A clever hacker took Shodan and Metasploit and he put the two together. It only took him 400 lines of Python code to do it. And he shared his work on social media and on GitHub. So all the code is actually publicly available. With this system that has a quite simple to understand user interface, you can actually use that scanning capability of Shodan to identify servers and targets all over the world, and then launch the correct vulnerabilities, or the correct exploits against those vulnerabilities. In fact, I'm doing it at this service. This is just the first version. Look at the upgrades. There's also version 4 already out there. So hackers are innovating. They're putting one and one together to create a new capability. They're sharing their work. I don't think the people who wrote Autosploit are necessarily evil. I do know that bad guys are using this sort of capability. And if you wanted to learn about how to use it, there's no excuse not to, because it's very easy to find online. It's very easy to understand. So now a script kiddie, a very basic hacker, like I was when I was growing up, can use a tool like that to identify servers and targets all over the world and go from 0 to an attack in 100 seconds or less. So that's another thing that's happening today. I heard you played soccer this morning. So how well did the European team do? OK, I'm sorry to hear that. Here's a football player, or he's a soccer player from European team. I don't know if anybody here recognizes him. Stefan de Vrij. He played for the national Dutch team. I believe he also helped them win the World Cup the year that he played on national team. Is that right, my friend? You're the only fan of soccer in the room? No, OK. There are many fans of soccer in the room, but you know this soccer player. So as soccer players go, he's a very valuable player. After he won the World Cup, another team from Italy wanted to get this player. So he was traded from his team to Lazio. Lazio was the Italian team that acquired or that got traded in this soccer player. About £7 million, which in today's exchange rate is probably $5 million. No, I'm kidding. It's probably more like 7 million. I'm just making fun of the British currency. Don't ban me out of the United Kingdom, please. I'm talking to the people on the live stream. I like the God Save the Queen. OK, moving on from that embarrassing moment. They paid about £7 million, or at least they were supposed to pay about £7 million. They paid about £5 million, and then they owed another £2 million in another payment that was due. So a couple of months ago, the Dutch team called up the Italian team, and they say, hey, do you remember that great player we traded to you? Yeah, you still owe us about £2 million. You remember that? Oh, and the Italian said, oh, come, see, no. OK, I can't do an Italian accent. Yes, of course, we paid. We already paid the £2 million. Don't worry about it. We sent it according to the instructions in the email. What email? Aha. That email you sent us with the wire transfer details. So, of course, they were victims of business email compromise. They received an email that they believed to come from the original Dutch team. However, they sent it £2 million. Who knows to whom? Unfortunately, oh, €2 million. Oh, that makes it so much easier. Of course. It actually makes it worse. So this was something that happened to the business, to this particular business, the soccer team. However, this is happening all over the world. I know that you also had a NASCAR car outside, and NASCAR race cars. So the home, or one of the homes of NASCAR in the United States, is North Carolina, and I believe specifically the county called Cabarrus County. So even the home of NASCAR recently experienced a social engineering scam or a business email compromise. Instead of paying, I believe it was $2.5 million to a contractor, a vendor building out a new school in that district, they paid it out to criminals. Now, you may have heard about these business email compromises. You may not be so impressed with them, but I want to show you something that I personally was very impressed with. This recently happened, I think it was just 3 weeks ago. So this next story is about a company in the UK. I want you to focus on me while I set up the story. So this company is an energy company in the UK, and they have a boss, and the boss got an email from his German Uber boss, the boss of the parent company, that sent him an email that said, we have to pay out very urgently to this provider in Hungary, because otherwise the deal cannot go forward. Please pay out $250,000, $243,000 immediately. So, of course, this British chap was a little bit suspicious. He heard about these stories. He heard about these emails. He said, why don't I give that German boss a call and see if he can actually confirm the details? So, yes, indeed, he gave them a call. And he spoke to his German Uber boss, who said, yeah, of course, yes, do the transaction. And unfortunately, this was a deep fake voice. So it wasn't the actual CEO. He was talking to an algorithm generating the actual voice of the German boss. So the deep fake videos, you've heard about those. Maybe you've seen Obama rap or whatever other types of deep fake videos you may have seen out there. Deep fake voices are now available. And as soon as a new technology is available, what will the clever hacker criminals do? They will find a good use for it. And they have. So this is the point I'm trying to make about automation and innovation. In fact, another story about automation and innovation comes from here. So this is a beautiful ballroom. Imagine you're in a ballroom like this, only 20 times bigger, 6,000 people in Las Vegas, and what you're seeing is a competition, the first ever competition of its kind, 7 computers competing against one another on hacking. Specifically, they are competing on finding vulnerabilities and exploiting vulnerabilities autonomously. Computers that were created by humans, but are operating autonomously to hack one another. And the winner of this competition, the winner of a grand prize, $2 million, right here. No, I'm kidding. This is your soccer trophy, for those who can't see it. The winner of $2 million, the grand prize, Mayhem. That's the machine that won the Cyber Grand Challenge, sponsored by DARPA 2 years ago. Today, if you wanted to see Mayhem, you have to visit it in Washington, D.C., in the American History Museum. So that's where technology that was the state of the art 2 years ago, that's where it resides today, in the History Museum. This is how fast the pace of change is. So today, we are experiencing an actual arms race, but not between machines and machines. An arms race to find the talent, the people, the humans, that can create and design these machines and these new technologies, technologies that will use all of those AI buzzwords that you've heard of, algorithms and machine learnings and neural networks, but without humans to create them, to run them, to manage them, and to keep them in check, we don't have a future. So today, there is actually an arms race between my country, Israel, between China, Russia, and the United States, on getting the people, the smart people that can create that technology. And it's a similar arms race that's also happening in the security ecosystem as well. So hackers love innovation. They love moving away into the future. They love using new technologies. What about you? Just putting it out there. Think about that. So I've shared with you 5 lessons from hackers. Should we keep calm and carry on? Should we be doing the same things that we were doing 5 years ago and 10 years ago? I think it's time for some new ideas for the future. So very briefly, I'll share some of my ideas for the future with you, because I don't want to just scare you and give you all the problems of the cyber world without giving you some ideas of what you can do differently. One of the main things I always say to the people who I'm speaking with is that we all make thousands of security decisions each day, whether it is logging onto the Wi-Fi at Starbucks, or reusing a password, or maybe not installing the latest software update, or just not moving away from an antiquated technology. We make thousands of security decisions every day, as do the people who rely on us to protect them, the people that we serve. Those people are not standing in the trenches. They are right there with us on the front lines. It's each and every one of us and the people in our homes, our companies, our offices, and our communities that we actually need to empower and to protect and to provide cyber defenses and tools and capabilities too. So we have to think about the humans in the equation. And yes, we can talk until the cows come home about security technology. How can we find the best return on security investment? I believe it's not just in tech, it's in the combination of tech and talent. Or in other words, cybersecurity will always be a combination of the science, the technology, the automation, and the art, the human element. And we have to keep that combination in place. Or, as I mentioned earlier, in other words, the tech and the talent. Don't forget the talent. That's something I'm personally really focused on. And sometimes that talent can come from unexpected sources. Sometimes your best defense is a friendly offense. So those friendly hackers that I mentioned are out there, not just in Hollywood movies, but in reality. For the past 5 years, I've dedicated my time at Tel Aviv University to researching the phenomena of bug bounty programs. This is the program, or these are the programs that allow hackers to directly and indirectly work with big companies and help them find bugs, receiving a bounty or a reward for their findings. Companies that you know and rely on all have bug bounty programs. These are just a few examples, from United Airlines to Starbucks, Verizon, and Intel. But for example, let's take a company that's had a program for many years. This is Tesla. And this is a Tesla flagship car at the world's largest convention of hackers in Las Vegas. And this is a photo taken 5 years ago. As early as that, they decided to bring their product to meet the hackers and to invite the hackers to test their product. Last summer, they did something even more spectacular. They didn't bring a Tesla. They brought Elon Musk. So the founder of Tesla came in person to the hackers convention to meet and hire hackers for Tesla and for SpaceX. I know because I was there. I took that photo. I was very excited. I asked him a lot of questions about Mars. I also discovered that Tesla was giving out challenge coins, awards, these types of challenge coins that only go to the top hackers that help them find vulnerabilities. And there's only 20 of these in the world. Now, you can't buy anything with this coin in the store, but its intellectual and reputational value in the hacker ecosystem is worth its weight in more than gold. This is the type of innovation that's allowing companies to work with hackers. Another organization learned about it. It's called the Pentagon. The Department of Defense decided to start a Hack the Pentagon program. From the moment they started the program back in 2016, from the moment they opened it up to reports, until they received their first valid report of a known vulnerability, it only took 13 minutes. 13 minutes. Now, we're laughing, but what about the years, months, weeks that criminals, bad guys, and spies had access to those vulnerabilities on this nation's defense department's systems? They also give out challenge coins to help work with hackers. Hack the Navy, hack the Air Force, hack the Pentagon. All of these programs have seen amazing success. Who wins these challenge coins? What is the type of talent? Who is the type of talent that these programs are creating access to? This is Jack Cable, who won all 3 of these in his senior year of high school before turning 18. And according to him, I've spoken with him several times, winning that program and participating in it has changed his life. And now he's teaching at Stanford, showing other hackers how to be hackers for good, like him. So that is phenomenal. Indeed, the reality is that we are going to need more people like it. The security industry needs millions more professionals. All the workforce reports agree on that. And when I go out into the world, I want to see more friendly hackers. This is why I'm personally very hopeful about the fact that the Girl Scouts are now teaching girls about cybersecurity skills. Arguably more important skill for the future than making cookies or selling cookies. Whatever it is that Girl Scouts do, I was never a Girl Scout, because that wasn't an alternative that was available to me. But if now I could be a hacker and be a Girl Scout, if I was a young girl, maybe that would have been cool. When I go to the world's largest convention of hackers, called DEF CON, when I go to Las Vegas, I don't see 30,000 criminals. I see talented, clever, innovative individuals. I see kids that go there with their parents because they think being a hacker is a good idea for their children's future. And you know what? I absolutely agree. So the only thing left for me is to ask you, are you willing to step up and wake up to the hacker's world? Now that we've been through this journey, that I've shown you everything. Whatever you decide to do, that choice is in your hands alone. Thank you for your time today. Thank you. Thank you.